Have a little noise in the background, so hopefully nobody can hear it. Whoop. All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to do this Sponsor of Centers training with you all since we haven't been able to without the in-person. So we welcome you. Thank you so much for coming. And these modules are intended to provide an alternate form of training and education to our institutions while our in-person state training is unavailable during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you haven't done so yet, like Osreen said, please complete the pre-test. To do so, you can click on the link that she's putting in the chat box. And completing the pre and post-test is required in order for you to receive your certificate. So be sure that you do both of those. This is our contact information for the CACFP. The number displayed on the screen is our main line. Please be sure to bookmark the two websites that you see on the screen. It's our CACFP website and then the Colorado Nutrition Portal, or CNP website. And these links are also available to you in the chat box. So first, we're going to go ahead and introduce the CACFP team. And so starting in the top left corner, we have Naomi. She is the CACFP director. Next to her, we have Tanya, who is our compliance manager. And then we have Megan George Nichols, who does outreach and quality improvement performance. And then we have Osreen, who you've just met, and myself. And then we have Britt Martins. She's a nutrition consultant and also does the farm TECE work. Alicia is a nutrition consultant, and then Sydney is also a nutrition consultant. This is our fiscal team. So in the fiscal unit, we have Audrey Christensen, the administrator. Katie Roby is the purchasing agent, and then James Fazio is the compliance specialist. And then for our operations unit, we have Julie. She is the branch operations supervisor, and then we have Samantha, who is the support specialist, and I think she's joining us today. Hi, Sam. So now we want to hear from you all and have you introduce yourself so we know who's joining us today. So if you could please type in the chat box your name, the name of your center, and if you enjoy gardening, what is your favorite thing to grow? So it looks like some responses are starting to come in. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Julie. Suzette, Monica. Very great. Jen, Jennifer. Welcome, everybody. Patty. Okay. Oh, nice. Peaches. Yum. Poppies. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Tomatoes, yes, definitely. Those grow pretty well here, I think. I've had good luck with that. No gardening, Noelle, but enjoys wildflowers, yes. Stephanie, sunflowers. Flowers, yeah, lots of flowers. Mints and herbs, yes, Monica, I agree with that. I have some mint growing right now too. Patty, flowers, Ooh, chili and tomatoes. Very nice. Can make some salsa. All right. We have some more. Oh, Samantha, congrats on the Arrow Garden. It's so easy. You literally cannot mess it up. It's amazing. You're gonna love it. Cindy, yep, you like herbs. Very good. So tomatoes, nice. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing all of that. Sounds like we have a lot of tomato growers and lovers amongst us, and definitely flowers. Gorgeous. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so we're going to go over the course objectives. So in this course, you will learn about sponsoring organization participation requirements, as well as sponsoring organization responsibilities.
Lisa, can I just very quickly, I'm just looking at the names. I'm seeing some names here that I know are not sponsors of centers. So I just wanted to point out that this training is very specific for sponsoring organizations. So this might not apply to everyone. So if you are not a sponsoring organization, and if you are not planning on becoming a sponsoring organization, you do not need to take this training unless you're just curious what this means. You're more than welcome to be here. But I just wanted to make sure that you understand that this training is not one of the required trainings for everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good catch. Okay. It looks like, I just want to make sure. Would you check on that chat, Osreen? All right. So for sponsoring organizations, organizations that are eligible to participate on the CACFP as a sponsoring organization include public or private nonprofit organizations and eligible for-profit organizations. Nonprofit organizations can sponsor affiliated and unaffiliated, for-profit or nonprofit sites. But for-profit organizations can sponsor affiliated for-profit sites only. All right, so sponsors do assume full responsibility for more than one site. The types of sites include child care centers, outside school hours care center, adult daycare, after school programs, Head Start programs, and homeless or emergency shelters. And the sponsoring organizations can sponsor any combination of these that are affiliated or unaffiliated. So what is the difference? So there's two categories that sponsoring organizations can fall into, affiliated and unaffiliated. Affiliated means that all the sites are part of the same legal entity as the sponsoring organization. Unaffiliated means that some or all of the sites are legally distinct entities from the sponsoring organization. So participation requirements, there are some requirements that need to be completed in order to participate on the CACFP as a sponsoring organization. An online application in the College Nutrition Portal, or CNP, is required to be completed. The link to the website was recently added to the chat box. So we do recommend that you bookmark that website. You'll be using this website for submitting your claims as well as your applications. And this website is also combined now with the Department of Ed, SFSP and NSLP programs too. So it's just one spot for everybody now, which is great. We're very happy about that. And the online application does include a management plan and an administrative budget. So those two pieces do have to be included with that application for CACFP. And the organizations must also demonstrate financial viability, capability, and accountability. As previously mentioned, sponsoring organizations assume full responsibility for all sites participating under them, and this includes administrative and financial responsibility, as well as submitting and maintaining online applications. And sponsors must also provide adequate supervisory and operational staff for management and monitoring of the CACFP site. Right, so sponsoring organization responsibilities include providing program and nutrition related training, conducting monitoring site visits and reviewing monthly claims from the sites, undertaking corrective action from the monitoring visits when necessary, complying with financial record keeping requirements of the program, maintaining complete, valid, and appropriate records, submitting monthly claims, distributing funds to the sites if applicable, developing and implementing policies and procedures around CACFP operations, training, and integrity. All right, just wanted to check that. Okay. All right. So adding new sites to the sponsorship. Sites that are eligible to participate on the CACFP include public or private nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations that have at least 25% of its current enrollment or licensed capacity eligible for free and reduced prices, or 25% of the current enrollment receive Title 19 or Title 20 benefits that calendar month. It is important to note that sponsors of unaffiliated sites must inform the unaffiliated sites of their right to participate directly with the CACFP without going through the sponsorship of the organization. So sponsoring organizations that are adding new sites to their sponsorship must take a few steps in order to bring them on to the CACFP. And these steps are outlined in the new site checklist. And there is a link that'll be added to the chat box for that. And that includes completing an online site application for each new site in CNP, updating the institution application to reflect the additional racial and ethnic data, updating the budget, and updating the management plan to include the new site, providing the required documents to the CACFP, which will be discussed more on the next slide, and completing a pre-approval visit during a meal or snack. The CACFP must approve the new site application in CNP before the sponsor is able to submit a claim for reimbursement for the new site. So the documents that are required for new sites include a health inspection or a letter from the local health department stating that the site is exempt from a health inspection, which we usually only see for after-school sites. The license, or sorry, that's the license or license exempt checklist. Yes, the license exempt checklist only applies to certain programs, like I was saying, usually after school. And that link is added to the chat box for you to look at as appropriate. And then the pre-approval site visit form is also required for all institutions except for SFAs or school food authorities. And that site visit form is also being added to the chat box for a link. So for recertification procedures, this is our annual update to your application packet online. So for annual recertification each year, sponsors must review and update the online institution application, all of the site applications, the administrative budget, and they must review and update the online management plan when they're up for review that year, or like we said, when they're adding new sites. The sponsoring organization may need to revise the administrative budget and management plan more frequently at the request of the CACFP. So we are just going to do a quick poll to just gauge where everybody is at with all of this information. So the question is, which of the following documents must be updated during recertification each year? Please select all that apply. The options are institution application, site applications, administrative budget, and management plan. All right, got some answers coming in. Looks like people stopped voting. Oh, there we go. Excellent. All right. We'll go ahead and stop and share the results. So the question was specific to which of the following documents must be updated during recertification each year. So it looks like we had answers across the board for all four. Just to be clear on the management plan, that's not required during recertification each year. It's just the years that you're up for review. But otherwise, yes, both the institution and all the site applications and the budget would be updated. Okay. Go ahead and close that poll. All right. So now we're going to go on to training requirements. Sponsoring organizations are required to provide the following trainings. So monitoring staff CACFP training, these are the people that will be doing the site visits. Annual all staff CACFP training, and annual all staff civil rights training. So for the monitoring staff training requirements, all sponsoring organizations should train the monitoring staff on their specific duties. And this includes activities related to conducting site visits, what corrective action is and when it is needed, what the follow-up processes and requirements should also be included in the training, the household contact and 5-day reconciliation policies and procedures, technical assistance and the importance of it, claims processing, and menu reviews for meal pattern compliance. So the annual CACFP training must be performed annually. You must train all sponsoring organization staff and site staff with CACFP duties, including the monitoring staff on various CACFP topics. New staff will require more extensive training, while experienced staff may only require just a refresher on the topics each year. All staff must be trained initially before program participation as well. Training must be documented and needs to include the names of the attendees, the date the training occurred, topics covered, and the trainer's name. So our template covers all of this if you would like to use it. And that link is going to be in the chat box for you. And this annual CACFP training form may also include the annual civil rights training on it. So you do also need to complete the civil rights training annually, and documentation of this training must also be kept on file. The civil rights training materials can be found on our website. One is a self-study training guide, and then the other is a 5-question quiz to make sure they understood the information. So that link will be provided to you in the chat box as well. So I'm just going to pause there and see if I missed, were there any questions or anything I was reading in the chat or anything that I might have missed?
I'm not seeing any questions. I think we're good.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Osreen for the second half. So I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, sorry about that. Can you see my screen?
Yes, looks good.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on the chat messages. A lot of you are wondering if this training is for you. So let me just very quickly. All right. Okay, so there is some information that sponsors of centers are required to share with the sites. As a sponsoring organization, you will need to share the following with your sites. So you will need to share the newsletters, pertinent procedure and informational memos that you get from us, annual WIC informational flyer, and any other pertinent information regarding CACFP. And we're going to talk about record keeping requirements next. So all CACFP sponsoring organizations must keep all records for 3 years plus 4 months beyond the fiscal year to which they pertain. If you have purchased an online claiming or attendance system, make sure that you have records from the previous 3 years if you switch online systems to a different company. Records that you must keep include the following that are listed on the slide. So administrative and food service records, including monthly claim information and expense documentation, records of new sites and sites that have been closed, and training documentation. So training documentation needs to include your annual CACFP training for all staff with CACFP duties, the monitoring staff training, and then the civil rights training. So those 3 trainings that Lisa was just talking about. As a sponsoring organization, you are required to complete monthly edit checks. So the monthly edit checks must include the following. So you must ensure that each site only claims meals approved by the CACFP office. And prior to submitting the claim, sponsoring organizations must compare the enrollment records, days of service, and total meal claims to make sure that everything is matching up. The best practice, but not required, is completing a block claim edit check as well. So that's when you're looking at the records of meals served and looking for the block claiming, which is, every child is claimed for every meal every day. We call that block claiming. So that one is not required, but very much encouraged, because that would be somewhat of a red flag potentially. And we are going to do just a quick poll to make sure that all of that information was clear. So let me open that up. Okay, so monthly edit checks must include, and this is select all that apply multiple choice question. So the first option is checking that each site only claims meals approved by the CACFP office. The second option is the comparison of enrollment, days of service, and total meal claims. The third one is checking for block claiming, and the fourth one is completing household contacts. Seeing some responses coming in, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about it and select your answers. And I'm going to check the chat box real quick. Okay, I see some questions in the chat, so I'll make sure that I pause and we can answer the questions. Okay, I'm going to close the poll for now and share the results. Okay, so most of you answered this correctly. So the first 2 were the answers that we were looking for here. So the 2 required monthly edit checks are checking that each site only claims meals approved by the CACFP office, and comparison of enrollment, days of service, and total meal claims. The checking for block claiming is encouraged, but not required, edit check. And then completing household contacts is kind of a different thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. During this training, it would not be considered part of the monthly edit checks. Let me close this and open up the chat so we can address some of the questions here. Okay, so Suzette, what is the CACFP's fiscal year start and end date? So CACFP's fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th. Oh, Lisa just said that, sorry. And then I think this is just a direct message to me. Okay. Let me know if I missed anything, Lisa. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So the next little topic, we're going to talk about claims for reimbursement. So sponsoring organizations will obtain claim information from all of their sites. This includes, but is not limited to, attendance and sign-in, sign-out records, records of meals or meal counts, infant production records, and menus. Conduct the required edit checks as discussed on the previous slide, and then submit those claims for reimbursement. And that is done in our Colorado Nutrition Portal, or the CNP. We shared that website with you earlier today. It must be done within 60 days from the end of the month you're claiming for. And this is just a little bit of general CFP information. So any person entering claims into the Colorado Nutrition Portal must have their own user ID and password. If you don't have the user ID and or password and you need access to the CMP, please contact our CCFP main line or your nutrition consultant. We have our main line number displayed on the slide. And then once the reimbursement is received, sponsoring organizations must distribute the payments to the sites within 5 working days, if applicable. So not all sponsoring organizations will be distributing the funds. It is an option to instead provide the foods and then not distribute the funds. But if you are distributing the funds, then you must do so within 5 working days. All right, next we're going to talk about monitoring duties. So first, just an overview of monitoring duties. So monitoring personnel are responsible for all activities related to conducting on-site reviews or on-site visits. Monitors are also responsible for providing training related to nutrition or CACFP requirements to staff during the visit. Monitors should also provide CACFP technical assistance if it is needed during the site visit. So some of the examples of technical assistance would be providing feedback on family style dining, on their menus, or including or how to include more nutritious and or colorful meals, kind of things like that. When corrective action is required from the site, then the monitor is required to follow up on the corrective action to make sure that it is completed and sufficient. Lisa, feel free to interrupt me if there's some questions in the chat that we need to address.
That's okay, I'm just addressing them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you are required to complete a certain amount of monitoring visit, and that number of monitoring visits required will be determined based on how many months of operation or how many months that site is in operation during a year. So if site is in operation for 9 to 12 months, then you would need to complete 3 monitoring visits per year. Sites that are in operation for 5 to 8 months would need to receive at least 2 monitoring visits, and sites that are in operation for 1 to 4 months would be required to have 1 visit. And no more than 6 months may elapse between monitoring visits. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. So for most of our sites, for most of our sponsoring institutions, their sites are open at least 9 months. So most commonly, they would be required to receive 3 visits per year. So that's what we're kind of going to base on this next, this slide that you can see on the screen. So out of those 3 visits, at least 2 must be unannounced, and at least 2 must include observation of a complete meal service. So it doesn't have to be, breakfast or lunch or supper. It can be snacks. So either one is okay, but at least 2 of the monitoring visits must include an observation of a meal, and no more than 6 months can elapse between the monitoring visits. And this does include months when the site is closed or not operating CACFP. And the last thing I wanted to mention here is it is very important to note that within 28 days after your new site receives a pre-approval visit and begins operating CACFP, they must receive their first monitoring visit. So we will often refer to this visit as a 4-week visit or the 20-day visit. But this is a 28 calendar days and not site operating days. So this has been a pretty common finding this year. So just something that we wanted to point out here. Are we still good on questions, Lisa? Okay, awesome. Okay, so sometimes sites operate CCFP during the school year, and then they switch to Summer Food Service Program, or SFSP, during the summertime. If this is the case for you, you can count one of your SFSP visits as one of the 3 required CCFP visits. However, monitoring staff conducting the reviews must be from the sponsoring organization and must have received CCFP training in order for you to count that SFSP visit. And as a reminder, unannounced visits must occur during the site's normal operating hours. And this SFSP visit must be at least 30 minutes in length. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about review averaging. This is not very commonly seen, but this is an option. And if this is confusing, let me know. I think it can be a little bit confusing. So sponsoring organizations are allowed to conduct an average of 3 reviews of all sites each year. So what that means is sponsoring organizations are allowed to choose not to conduct a 3rd monitoring visit of a site for which no findings were identified during the first 2 unannounced reviews, and instead conduct a 4th monitoring visit of the site for which findings were identified. So each site must be reviewed no fewer than 2 times, and both of which must be unannounced, and one of which must include a review of the meal service if you're doing the review averaging. Does that make sense? Let me open up the chat to see. Looks like Lisa is on top of the answering questions. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, I'm going to do another poll, actually a couple polls here. So our first poll, how many site visits per monitoring year are required for sites operating 9 to 12 months? Would it be 1, 2, 3, or 4? I think we have everyone. Perfect, thank you. Let me share the results, and all of you got this correctly. So 3 is the correct answer. So you must conduct at least 3 monitoring visits for sites operating 9 to 12 months. And then let's do another poll while we're at it. How many months may elapse between monitoring visits? No more than 3, no more than 6, no more than 9, or no more than 12? I think we have almost everyone. Go ahead and share the results. So most of you answered correctly. The correct answer is no more than 6. If you like to go above and beyond and do monitoring visits every 3 months, that is fine, but the requirement is no more than 6 months may elapse between monitoring visits. All right, well done. All right, as a sponsoring organization, you must provide a written notice to all sites of the right of the sponsoring organization, the CACFP, the USDA, and or other state and federal officials to make announced or unannounced visits of its operations during the site's normal hours of operation. Sites must be notified that anyone making such reviews must display photo identification. if you discover the situation where there is imminent threat to health or safety, state or local licensing or health authorities must be notified. If conduct or conditions that pose an imminent threat to the health or safety of children or the public are discovered. All right, so we talked about site visits and the requirements for site visits. Next, we're going to talk about site visit documentation. So all CACFP site visits must be documented. Sponsoring organizations must use the CACFP site visit form. And I think Lisa is just about to add that to the chat box for you. If you would like to use your own form, that may be allowed, but you need to send it to the CACFP office first and get it approved before you can use it. So on the slide here, you can see our CACFP form. So it does have all of those requirements. So all of those checks that you must complete during the site visits are documented on this form. So this is a great form to use. But again, if you'd like to use your own, please send it to us first and get it approved. The purpose of monitoring is to check whether or not the site is in compliance with all CACFP regulations and to take actions if non-compliance is identified. So we try to kind of summarize it here a little bit. So first we have the meal pattern requirements. You will need to review the menus to ensure that they meet the CACFP meal pattern requirements and that the menus are posted. And you will also review the production records if applicable. License requirements must also be reviewed. This includes checking if the license is valid and posted, if attendance is within ratio, and the number of participants in attendance doesn't exceed the license capacity, and checking sign-in and sign-outs to make sure that they are complete. Monitors need to ensure that all site staff with CACFP duties have been trained on the CACFP as well as the civil rights. Then completing monitoring visits, you will also need to make sure that the records of meals served or the meal counts are completed correctly and at point of service. Enrollment forms must also be verified if applicable. Monitoring staff must also verify record keeping accuracy and make sure that CACFP funds are used appropriately. Child and infant feeding practices must also be reviewed for compliance with CACFP regulations. And lastly, food safety and sanitation standards must be reviewed, including verifying that any non-compliances identified in the most recent health inspection have been resolved. All aspects of the site visit form must be completed. If something does not apply to the site, the monitor may write an A or not applicable, but please do not leave the forms blank. Complete the form for the entire site and not just one classroom. This includes the meal observation, the meal count totals, and the 5-day reconciliation. We will talk about 5-day reconciliation on the next slide. If the response to any question is no, an action plan is required for correction. Okay, so 5-day reconciliation is a required portion of a site visit. The purpose of the 5-day reconciliation is to ensure that there are not more meals claimed than participants in attendance. To do a 5-day reconciliation, you will select 5 consecutive operating days from the current and or previous claiming month. If you pick a week where the center operated less than 5 days, you will need to add on additional day or days to make sure that you are looking at 5 operating days. And you make sure that you document the days that you selected. So this is just a little snippet from our site visit form. So you would document the days that you selected right here in the top right corner. And then you will write each day selected in the date column, which is on the left-hand side here. So then you would write each day here. And then the next step is to write the total attendance for each day under the total number of participants in attendance column. So this middle column right here, you will write the number of participants in attendance for each of those 5 days that you selected. And then the last step is going to be completing this this portion right here. So entering the breakfast, lunches, PM snacks, depending on what the site is serving. So you would enter the total numbers on the ROMs for all the meals claimed here. And then you'll compare the ROMs to the total number of participants in attendance. And if any meal or snack count total is higher than the total number of participants in attendance, then you will need to look at additional records. So we have an example of the completed form here. So you put your dates here, you put the number of totals of participants in attendance, then you looked at their ROMs and you put what they claimed for each meal that they're serving. And in this situation, we see that on October 6th, they claimed 50 PM snacks, but only had 49 participants in attendance. So if you find that a meal was claimed and a participant was not in attendance for the day, you will need to ensure that the meal or snack is not claimed. So this would be the situation where you may be required to complete a household contact in order to verify the attendance for that participant. Okay, we're going to do one more poll. I think this is our last poll for the training. So is the 5-day reconciliation an optional portion of the site visit or a required portion of the site visit? I think I have most of you, but just a couple more seconds. Okay, I think we're there. I'll end and share the results. So again, most of you answered correctly. 5-day reconciliation is a required portion of the site visit. So this is not optional. It's not 2 out of 3 visits or 1 out of 3 visits. It's all of your visits must have 5-day reconciliation. I'm going to stop sharing. And since 5-day reconciliation is an extremely important part of a monitoring visit, we will do an activity. So first I'm going to share this example with you again. So this is a 5-day reconciliation that was completed correctly. So you can see all of those components that we talked about are done here. So the dates selected are clearly stated. 5 days, all 5 days are completed. And you can see that in this example, there are no errors. So no ROMs or meal counts are greater than the number of participants in attendance. And now we're going to do an activity. So take a look at the completed 5-day reconciliation example displayed on the screen. And we're going to use just the chat box feature for this activity. So I have 2 questions for you. First question is, was this 5-day reconciliation completed correctly? Yes or no? And if it was not completed correctly, what are the errors that were identified? I'm sorry, I don't think I worded that right. So the first question is, was it completed correctly? Yes or no? And then the second question is, are there any errors during this 5-day reconciliation that would require further follow-up or investigation? Let me open up the chat. Perfect. I'm seeing some questions coming in. It looks like all of you got it right. So I guess it was a little bit tricky. So was this 5-day reconciliation completed correctly? Is yes, right? Because the monitor did it right. They selected the 5 days, they listed all 5 days, they put the number of participants in attendance, and then the ROMs. But then I'm seeing all of the errors that you're listing, and that is correct. So there is an error here, which most of you are pointing out in the chat. I wonder if I have this. Here it goes. Right, so on October 7th, they had 43 participants signed in attendance, and then they claimed 45 lunches. So in this situation, you would need to look at additional records or complete a household contact to verify that attendance, or you would need to disallow those 2 lunches that were claimed beyond the attendance. Let me open up the chat, see if there's any questions. Just seeing that all of you pointed out the error. Perfect. Okay, so now let's talk about the errors or issues next. So when you identify issues during your monitoring visits, what do you do? So we get some great questions about monitoring visits and what to do when an issue is identified during a site visit. So I'm going to share some typical outcomes when an issue is identified during a site visit. So if the issue is something simple, it's not a consistent issue, you can fix it on site and document that on the site visit form. So you always want to document all errors, even if they were corrected on site. But if it's something small and simple, it can be corrected right there. Go ahead and correct it, help them correct it, provide technical assistance, and then document it on that site visit form. If it is an issue that occurs in many classrooms or has happened in the last few visits, have the involved staff or director complete a corrective action plan and then send it to you by a specific date. So if the issue is somewhat more complicated, then ask for that corrective action plan, give them a deadline, make sure that they submit it to you by that deadline and that they corrected the issue. Disallow meals if the issue results in disallowance. So for example, if child's meals claimed when participants were not in attendance, kind of what we saw in the 5-day reconciliation, or a meal served while you were completing the site visit was not creditable. So those would be some examples of errors that would result in disallowance. You should always provide technical assistance while on site. So right now, if you're completing your monitoring visits remotely due to COVID-19, you still should be providing technical assistance, same as if you were on site. And schedule an additional training for site staff if needed. So that is always a really good follow-up action. If they're not doing something right, it's probably because they weren't trained on that. So if you identify that training is needed, go ahead and provide that training or schedule the training at a later time. If you run into issues that are repeated, so there are occasions when issues are identified during several visits and then they are not permanently corrected. When this occurs, you will need to disallow meals if that issue does result in disallowance. So kind of what I talked about earlier. So if the child's meal is claimed when participant is not in attendance, or the meal that is served while you're there is not creditable. If it is a repeated issue, then you will discuss with the site staff and the supervisors immediately. You will create a corrective action timeline, which would include training, written corrective action plan, etc. And then you will also have to complete a follow-up unannounced site visit focused specifically on that issue that was repeated. And again, I think I mentioned this before, but you must document everything that you do on site. So all areas of non-compliance identified during the review, required corrective action to correct the problems, description of technical assistance provided to the site staff. You must also conduct follow-up visits to evaluate whether problems are corrected, and documentation must be maintained for follow-up visits. So you always want to look at the previous visit that you completed before you do your next one to make sure that you review all the issues that were identified during the previous visit, so you can follow up, make sure that all of that was corrected, that none of those issues are repeated issues, because again, that would kind of create a little bit bigger problem that would need to be addressed and followed up with the unannounced follow-up visit. Okay, so this was a lot in one training, but we got through it. We do have a lot of time for questions, but just to recap, so what this training covered was sponsoring organizations' participation requirements and sponsoring organizations' responsibilities. Thank you for completing this course. And like we mentioned at the beginning, in order for you to receive your certificate, you will be asked to complete the post-test. Once you complete the post-test, your certificate will be emailed to you. But please give us 3 to 5 business days to get those certificates to you. So it's not going to be sent to you automatically once you submit your post-test. I'll have to go through it and send it to each participant. So if you can just give me a few business days to get that done. If you don't have your certificate, a week later, then definitely let me know, send me an email, and I'll make sure that I get that certificate to you. If you'd like to complete the post-test at this time, you can go ahead and click on that link in the chat that Lisa just added. I will also follow up with an email after this training, and I will add that link to the post-test there, so you do not have to take the post-test right now. We do have quite a few minutes left in this training for questions. And then once you receive your certificate, please keep that certificate on file for the review purposes, because we will ask to see your certificate when we do your review. So I'll go ahead and close this presentation now so we can go into the questions and answers session. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have questions, or you can continue to use the chat feature. And if you have to go, we understand, we value your time. So this part of the training is optional and not required. So let me go ahead and close the presentation and open up the chat. It looks like Lisa has done a great job responding to some questions. All right, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so Monica has a question. For annual training requirements, all staff within the centers need to meet these requirements. So for annual training, what is directors? So annual CCFP training is for everyone with CCFP duties. So this is when you would go and train your site staff that has CCFP duties, specifically on those duties that affect their positions. So for example, that would be, if teachers are marking the ROMs in the classrooms, then they would need to be trained on that. And if that's all they do, that's CCFP related, then that is the only thing they need to be trained on. So they do not need to come to this training and learn all about CCFP, because that doesn't apply to their job. So they just need to be trained on that specific CCFP duty that they are performing. And then directors, if they're more involved with CCFP, then they need to be trained on whatever their position is in charge of.
To follow up, sorry, probably easier to, I'm new, so I just started in April. I'm on Fort Carson, and So I do have caregivers that are in the classrooms. They do the meal counts, which whenever I go out and do my inspections or my observations, I will ask them and retrain or see how they're conducting the meal counts. So would I just document that as my training, or do they need to have a specific training with me?
They would need to be trained on CACFP. So you being there doing the monitoring visit and kind of doing it right there, is kind of correcting the problem instead of, making sure that they're set up for success.
Okay.
So you would need to have some sort of annual training for all staff with CACFP duties. And that training does need to be documented. We have that form that we shared. So you need to document who completed the training, when, and who attended the training.
And that's including the civil rights.
And also you would need to list, what topics were covered. So civil rights could be part of that annual training, or it could be a separate training. It's up to you how you want to do it. But so both CACFP training is required annually, and then the civil rights training is required annually. So it is easier sometimes to combine the two into one. And just do them at the same time, but they don't have to be combined into one training. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And if you did cover the civil rights during your CACFP training, then just go make sure that you document that civil rights training was also done at that time, and you still have that civil rights training documentation, which is that 5-question quiz that they would need to complete.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Right, yes. And then another person had a question, when should the post test be done? I wouldn't wait too long. So I send your certificates based on who completed the post test. And I will give you a couple of days to complete it. And then I usually send it the following week on Monday or Tuesday. So if you can complete it by then, that would be great. If you complete it later, you likely won't receive your certificate. Just go ahead and send me an email saying I just completed the post test, so I can make sure to go in and verify and send you the certificate.
Osreen, this is Jen. I think that the last page where we're supposed to enter information, there's a glitch because there are other people's information being added in right before my eyes, or you can't enter information. So I see different emails being popped in and out. So just an FYI. So
whoa, thank you, Jen. Thank you for that.
Do that somehow.
Yes, I will go ahead and make sure that we look into that right away. Yep, so looks like somebody else just had that same comment. Okay, let's go ahead and not complete the post test at this time. Let me go ahead and figure out that technical issue, get that resolved, and then I'll send a follow-up email to everyone with a link to the post test to make sure that all of that is working correctly. Thank you for pointing that out.
Retake it then.
If you don't mind, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Let's see, any other questions? If you had a question typed in and we missed it, please go ahead and either type it in again or unmute yourself. I want to make sure that we got a chance to answer all the questions before we finish the training. So I want to just give you a couple minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Suad. I'm from R Academy. I have 2 questions. The first one, it's a new program, and we try to start the program for the food program. So there is a question about the budgeting, and I'm not sure how can I do that. Then there is a phone number that we called already to help us with starting the application. I left a voicemail, but no one called us yet. Is there any way that we can schedule an appointment for R Academy? And then that budgeting thing, if you have any form, any like a sample of budgeting, just so I can look at it and see see and have an idea how that look like, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think the easiest way would be if you could send me an email, just so I have your information and I can make
Thank
sure
you.
that I connect you to the correct people to help you with that.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Do you mind sending me, can you send me an email? Is that okay?
Of course, yes, of course, I will send you an email. Then just another question, it's regarding the post-test. So, you know, I did take the test before, and now it's there is a survey, and the survey is like pick an answer, and that's the glitch. Is it you took it, you want to take it in person, mix, or online, and does not give me the choice. So what I supposed to do? Like it's a click 1, 2, 3, and does not take it. Yep. You can share my screen if you want to see.
That's okay. I'm going to go ahead, since we already have another technical issue with the post test. I will just go ahead and ask that you wait to take the post test, and
I already did, and it's the survey after that, which is, you know, it's like 3 questions. So the first question, it does not let me pick, you know, pick the answer. So I click
It's the
in person.
question of want to do it in person,
Yeah,
mixed, or all online. You have to select all 3 to allow you to go to enter. So you just have to click all 3, and then it'll let you select and submit.
I gotcha.
It does not even do that. So I pick like select 1, 2, 3, or select them all.
Okay, sorry about that. I will make sure we correct that, and I will just ask everyone to take the whole post test thing again. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
I can just switch the, you know, I can move it, but it does not let me put it on the space that I can put it in as a select answer. It does not let me do that.
I gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
I will get that taken care of, and I will send an email to everyone once we are good to go with the post test, and I'll just ask that everyone will.
And for the budget thing, someone will help us with that when when you set up an appointment.
Yes, we do have our fiscal team, and they should be able to help you with your budget.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I really appreciate that. Do we have another training tomorrow? Is that what you mentioned earlier?
No, so this is actually the very last training that is offered in this format at this time. But we do have our training newsletter that we send out every month. So that is something to kind of keep an eye out on. And if we have any other trainings that we will be offering, that's where we will announce that. So just make sure that you receive those from us, or you subscribe to our newsletter, and then that way you will be up to date with all of our training information.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. All right. Thanks, Lisa, for adding that link in there as well.
Sure. I figured just in the meantime, if anyone wanted to look at it, they could that way. Looks like Brittany has a question as well. The annual applications are the same ones that must be completed for a new site, or just budget and management plan? The annual applications are the same ones, I think, if we're talking about the same thing. So under that same applications tab, application packet dash center, that's where your application packet is housed in CNP. And the main screen will show like the institution application, the budget, checklist, some other things. And then below that is where all the site applications are housed. So yeah, that's the area where you would be updating everything. Annually, so recertification, we actually waited to open it until the new fiscal year. When we open that new year, we call it recertification. We waited until October 1st last year to open that. And it seemed to work out pretty well. So that, I believe, is our plan again for this year. We're not going to open it in the summer. We're going to wait until October 1 again to open that up for everybody to complete their review of all the applications and submit all their documents. So let's see, Brittany, what institution are you with? You can see when you're up for review next to answer your question about the management plan. Or let me know if that didn't answer your question.
No, you're good. I'm with Otero Junior College Child Development Services, and I am just stepping in to the health and nutrition manager role. So I'm just learning about CA, CFP, and what all will have to be in place and so forth. So I just want to make sure that if I needed to fill out applications and management plans and budgets, then I knew that I needed to get those done and when, and which ones I needed to make sure I'm completing them correctly.
Oh, sure. Okay. Would you privately message me the name of your institution?
Yes.
The full name, and then I'll get that response to you. And I know Randy asked when is the due date for the application. We really hope that everyone will just get it done in October. But we always have some stragglers that go into November, possibly even December. Just know that until you complete it, you won't be able to submit your October claim, which is due by the end of December. No problem. Okay. Oh, thank you, Brittany. Got it. All right. Any other questions?
I just read through the chat. I think we answered everything. If you think of any other questions or if something comes up, you can always call us or email us. So all of you have your assigned nutrition consultant. If you don't know who your assigned nutrition consultant is, you can always just call the main line and they will be able to connect you with the correct person. But if you do know who your nutrition consultant is, they are your main point of contact. So we're all here to help. Don't ever hesitate to call us or email us if you have any questions or concerns about anything. All right, well, thank you very much for being here with us today. I will figure out the whole post-test technical issues. I'm very sorry about that. And I will send you an email once it is good to go and ready for you to complete your post-test. And this is the last of our Zoom trainings. So if you have attended multiple, thank you very much. At this point, our trainings will be offered as pre-recorded online webinars. So you can always go to our website and watch the webinars at your own pace. And other than that, I will close this training and have a great day. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.